Hey guys, Mike Teaches Program here, and I'm here with another tutorial. In today's tutorial, what we're going to be looking at is API first driven development and how we can incorporate that into our Java Spring Boot projects. So why API first? What is API first? API first is pretty much defining your controller and your different endpoints in your project before you even go to code or add implementation to these endpoints. So it's basically, you're giving your user, and there's no disparity between what the user thinks they're getting, and it just leads to less bugs coming in from the user because you're telling them exactly what is being returned, what models are being returned, what endpoint they need to hit, and what different kind of requests they can make to this endpoint. And with architects and teams, it can lead to a lot less trouble. So what we're going to do is create a library service, and this library service is going to be Java Spring Boot, and it's going to contain one endpoint, a get books, and we will do this using an API first approach to create that endpoint. Okay, so let's create a new project. Spring initializer, I'm going to call it com.michael, and the artifact is going to be library service, and just change it to is next, and in the web, Spring Web next, and finish. So if somebody told you now to create an endpoint, usually you would go into source, main, Java, wherever, create a new package called library controller, and create your endpoint from there. But that's not what we're going to do. First thing we need to do is create a new resource, and it's going to be called library api.yaml. Okay, so first thing we need to do here is mark it as open API, and we're going to be using version 3.0.0. Okay, and first section is our info section. So info section is going to be version. So let's call it 0.0.1, and let's give it a title, library service, and our description, the library service. So what we're doing here is we are creating our OpenAPI YAML file. We're going to define all of our endpoints here before we even touch the code in a YAML format, and then we can give this to the customers, and then we can generate. Excuse me. So next thing we need to do is, or the next section is tags, like adding tags. So add a name, and the name will be library. Okay, now that's fine. Tags we'll come back to later, just put it in for now. I will talk about it as soon as it comes up. Now let's talk about the paths. This is the main part of this API YAML file. Okay, this is where we define where the user is going to get the different endpoints from. So the first thing you do is define your endpoint. So I want them to go to library/books. That's it. We have our endpoint defined, but we have no operations under this endpoint. So we can do a get. You can see there that it comes up. It's auto. It automatically says which one to do. So we can do a post, we can do a put, patch, but what we said we're going to do is a get. So let's do a get. So the first thing we can do is we can give it a quick summary. So this is summary. We can then tag it, and we can tag it under library. And then we can give it another description, which should be a more detailed description. This is a description. And the operation ID. So the operation ID is kind of the method name that's going to be generated. So let's get all books in library. Now, next thing you need to do is define what needs to be returned, the model, the data structure that the user gets. So let's do that. I'm pretty much skimming through all that we can do, but OpenAPI does offer a lot more. So let's say if we have a post and we need a body to be represented in the JSON value that the user passes up. So let's say we want to create a book, then we can add a request body and point to the model that we create. But for now, we're not doing that. We can also add parameters in here. So we can, if we want to filter by the books by a certain parameter, we can do that too. But we're not going to do that. And we can also add, so if we want to get by ID, we can also do this and take an ID and then, but I'm not going to talk about that. Maybe we can do that in a later video. So now the next thing we want to do is the responses. So let's say we define all of our responses here. So in the case it's OK, so we 200 OK, that's the HTTP status code. So let's type in a quick description. This means it's OK. And what do we need to return? So the content is going to be application /JSON, and its schema is going to be a type array, and its items is going to be $ref, and just leave it blank for now. So in here, probably guessed it, is where we're going to fill in our model. So basically what we said is, if it's a 200 OK, this is what we're returning, an array list of these items. So again, you can copy paste this, turn this to 400 bad request, 409 conflict, or 404 not found, and you can just return a different model. So let's go and create that model. So the first thing we need to do is type in components, and then I think under components it is schemas. You guessed it, we need to create that schemas. So here is where we will be creating our book model. Okay, so book, we can give it a quick description. This is the book model, and we can also then give it the type object. Next thing is we give it some properties, so the properties of the book. So the first one we're going to do is name. So we can also give it a description here, the name of book, and its type. So its type is going to be a string. We can go back and we go book author. Again, you can add a description, and the type is going to be a string too. Name of author. Now we've done that, and the next thing we need to do is fill in this book into this reference. So if we just type in, okay, so we need to do the hashtag and then /components, and we can see there that it fills in the book value /components /schemas /book. So what we're saying here is, okay, OpenAPI 3, bit of info, the tags, paths, define. If the user goes to here, they can only do one operation, which is get. In the case if it's 200, they'll receive this book model. Now, before we do anything, what I suggest strongly is to open editor, Swagger online editor. Okay, so you can see here that I've done one before, but I'll leave this in the description. And this here is to pretty much debug your application before we go and import any kind of Swagger code generation tools. So let's reopen that Swagger editor, copy and paste our API YAML, and we can see on the right hand side, this is what the user will be seeing. So again, you can change this at runtime, so the library service description, and you can see here that it will give you this. So the tags, library tags. So if I do, sorry, I was going to duplicate that, but I didn't. So if I do this and I put in another one, I call it library 3. You can see here that library and library 3 come up. Because I have tagged no endpoints under library 3, nothing's there. But under, oh, sorry, what have I done there? Okay, but under library, I've tagged an endpoint, so we can see /library/books. So let's get rid of that tag. If we have a look at library, we see our get endpoints on library books. See the summary, descriptions, takes no parameters, and the responses. In the code 200 OK. This means it's why do I keep doing that? This means it's OK. And what we get is an array list of objects with the book name and book author. And down here we can see our schemas as well. Book, this is the book model, name, and book author. So that is pretty much it. The next part then is the coding of our API YAML. So how do we actually generate these objects? So what we need to do is go to our POM file, and I have I have an import for us. Now I will include this in the description, and you just change it to how your API YAML looks. So let's post that. Just give it a little format. Okay. So everything. Oh yeah. Why have I done that? So let's take this out and put it here, and Control A. And so make sure you put the plugin inside the plugins tag. That would be a help. Okay, so this is our Swagger code generation plugin. So you can see here, this is kind of standard stuff. We want it to generate, and the configuration is the part where we'll need to change around the most where you'll need to change around to suit your application you're creating. I could not speak there for a minute. I don't know why. So again, for the input spec, so the input spec is the path to your library API YAML. So let's put that in there, library API.YAML. The output, so we want it to go into generated sources. Now, we can see here that I have API package and model package. So I want the API package to be in com.michael.libraryservice.api, and I want the model package to be in not the exact same one, but com.michael.libraryservice.models. Okay, so that's going to store the schemas that we see in the book in models, and it's going to store the API that it creates in the API. Now, there's also one more thing that we need to add, and that's a list of dependencies for Swagger to work. So these dependencies are kind of for the annotations. So if we see here, so just for the Swagger annotations and the Swagger models, so you can change the versions to your liking, but I'll leave these dependencies in the description too. So still, that's just a setup. Now what we need to do is click Maven, and you can do this in terminal. Just type in Maven clean install. I am missing a lot. I am running over this a good bit. I just want to get the basics in, and then from this video we can take any questions, or I can go into more detail. So you can see here in the target folder and in generated sources, source, main, Java, com, Michael, library service, the API, and the models, exactly where I told Swagger Code Gen to put them, API and models. So if we click on the API, the library API, we can see here that we have our library API, and it's /library/books generated from our library, or our library API.YAML. And then we can also see in our generated files we have book name and book author. So that means that any developer cannot come in and change these because they'll be regenerated. What you have to do is make changes to the library API, and that will cover you because it will break your implementation somewhere along the line. Okay, so how do we incorporate them now? Next thing we do is we go up to library service, your code, and we add a new package and call it controller. Now let's make a new Java class, call it library controller, and this library controller implements the library API. So let's mark it with at REST controller, and let's import the method. And what we'll do is we will, as you can see here, that you don't need to annotate it with anything. All of it's done in the interface that's generated. Let's make a list of books, or a list of book, and we'll call it books is equal to new array list. And let's create a new book. We'll call it book 1, or is equal to new book, and book dot set name, we'll call it to Harry Potter, Harry P. And let's duplicate this line and set off book author, and we'll call JK. Let's copy, let's duplicate that. Let's add 2 books, why not? 3, that's book 3, even though it's book 2. And we'll call it my book, or my boo, and it's done by me. And let's add these books to the array list. So again, here is where you would go to your database, get the books, and return them. But for now, we don't have a database. I could have just added the same book twice. Oh well. And then what we do is return new response entity, and we return the books and HTTP status code. Okay. And that is it. So let's spin this up. It should run on port 8080, and let's test it out. So let's just wait for it. I'm using Postman to test our API. So you can see here that I'm going to send a GET request to localhost 8080 /library /books and do a GET, and you can see here, down here, that we get an array list of objects. So that's pretty much short and sweet version of API first and how to develop using that principle. Hopefully this video gains a bit of traction, and we can go from there, and I can go into more of adding parameters and doing more post requests and simple stuff. So yeah, thanks. Make sure to click the subscribe button, and I will see you soon.